Safe streets, vibrant neighborhoods, successful business and commerce. These are things that make a healthy community. We are a diverse community, rural, suburban, urban. A multitude of languages and ethnicities, ages and experiences. We are a collaborative community. Public-private partnerships make us a model community that others want to follow. It is what makes us unique. It is what makes us strong. The employees of Kent County reflect our diversity and seek to serve our communities.
People in this county, in this area, we wrap our arms around each other. We come together to collaborate, to solve problems. We're all working for the good of the whole. And I think that's wonderful. And you can see it. You can see it as you drive around Kent County.
Our impact starts the day a baby is born and a birth certificate is issued, to protecting children from deadly diseases through vaccination, to the public safety and justice provided by law enforcement and the courts, to offering veterans services and caring for the elderly. Every day we work to keep our communities robust.
I think if you are somebody who is interested in serving your community, in building a strong knowledge base and a good group of people to work with, then the county is one of your best employment opportunities out there. It's been completely rewarding in every way I could possibly explain for 26 years, and I feel like I grow every single day still today.
Leading these dedicated employees, our 19-member Board of Commissioners and our County Administrator Controller, along with our elected officials and appointed department directors, placing emphasis on civic involvement, quality housing, vibrant neighborhoods, and strong, solid infrastructure to allow businesses to thrive. Professional, dedicated, collaborative, and innovative.
Behind the scenes, collaboration between foundations, charitable organizations, nonprofits, for-profit businesses, public sector demonstrated through the county, the city of Grand Rapids, the townships, all the cities and the villages in our area. If we don't come together, then we will not have the strength that we have today, and I only hope to build upon that.
Our aim is to make our communities the best they can be. We are involved in exciting development projects, sustainable recycling programs, and creative progressive prevention programming. We partner with elected officials, impacting policy ideas that become great achievements. We seek opportunities to reach out into the community and offer our services to help our residents make Kent County thrive.
Our relationship is solid, both from a staff standpoint at the county level as well as the Board of Commissioners. And they understand what we do and the benefits that we can do for the community, and vice versa. We couldn't do what we do without the help of Kent County.
While most of us are busy running our lives, Kent County's elected officials, administrator controller, and over 1,600 employees are serving the communities where we live our lives, so we can all have a place we are proud to call home. Kent County, its life well run.
All right, good morning. We are going to get started for our Kent County Board of Commissioners meeting.
Bang your gavel.
Good morning. All right. Good morning. We're going to get started. For the Kent County Board of Commissioners meeting Thursday, July 25th, we'll call the meeting to order. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioners Skaggs. Here. Wooden.
Here.
Womack.
Here.
Bulkowski.
Present.
Talon.
Here.
Hennessy.
Here.
Melton.
Here.
Sparks.
Present.
Salfeld. Breivy.
Here.
Kallman. Voorhees.
Present.
Ponstein. Here. Vice Chair Steck.
Here.
Commissioners Jones.
Here.
Morgan.
Here.
Antor.
Here.
Vonk.
Here.
Chair Bolter.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have 18 members present, 1 absent. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I will now call on Commissioner Salfeld for the invocation today.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
I have the honor of introducing Pastor Matthew Starner. He is in charge of worship and communication at my home church of St. Matthew Lutheran in Ada, and I will turn it over to Matthew.
Thank you for the invitation to offer a prayer on behalf of the Commission. Let's pray. God, our Heavenly Father, we thank you that you give to us people to lead and to guide and to govern, that the peace and justice would be upheld for all people. God, we pray this morning for wisdom in abundance as decisions are made, that we would be about the good of this community, that we would seek to care for the place that you have placed us, to love our neighbor, and ultimately to give you honor and glory. This we pray through Jesus Christ, your Son, our Lord. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we will move on to item 5, special order of business, and I'll call up Steve Blond for our comprehensive financial annual report. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me here today. It has been my pleasure to serve as the independent external auditor for Kent County for a number of years. Apologize, I was at Wayne County yesterday and was actually planning to share a story with you about how I was holding Kent County up as the gold standard for good behavior, and I got ahead of myself. I've ruined my good story for later today.
Good save.
I am coming back to it, I promise. It has been my pleasure to serve as the auditor for Kent County for a number of years, and I am pleased to present the results of the 12/31/18 audited financial statements to you today. I have 3 documents that I will be presenting from, all of which are available in the public record, both on Kent County's website and on the state of Michigan's website. I'm going to start with just a few very quick overview comments from this very thick, comprehensive annual financial report. I will start just with the title of this report, the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. Just to remind you, this is above and beyond the minimum requirements set for local governments in the state of Michigan. Kent County has a long track record of going through and providing not just the minimum information, but a tremendous amount of additional information for its citizens about the county's financial and economic condition, 10-year trend information, etc. And it has a long track record of receiving an award from the Government Finance Officers Association for the quality of its financial reporting, this year being no exception. This document is, over 240 pages long. Out of all of this, there's only 2 or 3 pieces of paper that we as your external auditors are directly responsible for, and you'll find them at the 3rd tab labeled Independent Auditor's Report. All of the numbers, all of the information contained in this report is prepared by the county's management. The Fiscal Services Department maintains the books and records throughout the year, provides the records to us, and then we assist in compiling it into this format. But this opinion from us is really the driving focus of the financial statement audit. And it takes a couple of pages to get to the good stuff, but on page 20 you'll see a paragraph labeled Opinions, and it says there that in our opinion these financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects. To put that in plain English instead of auditor speak, it means we think you, as elected officials, can rely on the financial data that's in this report. Our audit is designed to look for, is the information accurate enough to use it to make good financial decisions? The nature of an audit is such that we can't look at every single dollar of every single transaction that runs through the county's books. You have a very large staff that spend an entire year preparing the records. We have a smaller staff that's on site for just a few weeks. We focus on the most important areas, the highlights. We look for things that could be large enough to impact your decision-making process. Anything we find, big or small, we'll bring to your attention. And in fact, everything that I'm going to bring to your attention through the rest of this report tends to be the small things because you do so many things well. It's hard to highlight all the stuff that's done appropriately. But this was a very clean audit, the highest level of assurance that we can give you in a financial statement audit. I do have to remind you on an annual basis, I know you're tired of hearing it, there is always the chance, it's a very small chance, but there's always the chance something could slip through a financial statement audit and not be detected. That's normal, it's a natural limitation of the audit process, there's no way around that, but we believe that these financial reports are something you can place reliance on. Since it's usually one of the most important things people want to take a look at, I will draw your attention all the way back to page 126, which is the general fund budget to actual statement. There's a lot of other information in this report, but in terms of how did we do compared to our plan, the general fund budget to actual is a great place to start. On page 126, you can see that the general fund, you had authorized a total revenue stream of approximately $157 million. Actual revenues came in about $2 million better than that projection. you had appropriated about $140 million to spend on a variety of programs. Actual expenditures came about $8 million under that target. So favorable on both the revenue side and the expenditure side. In bottom line, fund balance for the general fund increased by a little over $3.5 million, ending the general fund at about $75 million, which is an excellent financial position to be in. It meets your stated policy for minimum fund balance. And now if I can go back and use my ruined story, I was actually talking at another county yesterday about the different states of fund balances in the largest counties around the state, and they were asking what's a healthy number and how do we assess a healthy number. And I was actually pointing to Kent County as one of the gold standards, because not only do you have a healthy fund balance, but you've done the very important step of adopting a formal policy that sets aside resources as needed for unexpected catastrophes, the rainy day fund, budget stabilization, and setting a minimum fund balance to recognize the fact that much of your fiscal year goes by before property tax collections come in partway through the year. And knowing that you need to have a cushion to operate on for a good half of your fiscal year, having an appropriate minimum fund balance policy puts you in a very upper echelon of county governments in Michigan, and I certainly commend you for that strong position and the discipline, frankly, that it takes to maintain that. I'm happy to come back during questions and answer any other financial highlights, but that was the really important stuff I wanted to cover in this report. If I could move to the smaller bound report, it looks like this, and it's labeled Single Audit Act Compliance. Just as a reminder, Kent County receives a fair amount of federal grant dollars. About $28 million was expended during 2018 over a wide array of programs. There's a list in this report. It takes about 6 pages to list out all the different grant programs. And as a condition of receiving federal grants, any government that receives a significant amount has to go through an extra layer of auditing called a single audit. And that's what this report is intended to address. There are 2 different pieces of the single audit that lead to reports from us. The first one is on page 9. The next one's on page 11. You're welcome to look at the reports themselves, but it's sometimes easier just to jump to the summary of all of our reports, and that's found on page 15. So if you want to see the details, they start on page 9 and 11. The summary's on page 15. And on page 15, we start right off with what was the overall auditor's opinion on the financial statements. And that is unmodified. That's the good, clean audit opinion that we mentioned briefly a moment ago inside the CAFR. The next question is, did we find anything in the way that the county maintains its books and records throughout the year? Our primary focus is on whether or not you, as the county commission, can rely on the financial statements. But in order to do that, we have to look not just at the numbers, but the processes, the internal controls that you follow throughout the year. And anything that we identify that we think could have an impact large enough to impact your decision making, we need to bring to your attention. And in this year's audit, we had one finding that rose to that level of a material weakness, something that we think is important enough to address, and I will get to that in just one moment. Frankly, for an organization of this size, this complexity, the number of departments, to only have one matter come to and rise to that level on the financial statement audit is quite good. Obviously, we'd love it to be completely clean, and in many years it has been. We'll address that one issue in just a moment. The next section of this report talks about federal awards. And as I mentioned, there were $28 million expended on federal awards, and we tested specifically 5 of your largest programs this year. The way a single audit works is we don't test every program every year. There's a rotation basis. And the 5 programs are listed at the bottom of page 15: Food Distribution Cluster, Continuum of Care, Housing Choice Voucher, Child Support Enforcement, and the Community Services Block Grant. Of those 5 programs, we had 2 programs that identified issues. The other 3 were perfectly clean. They were unmodified, no findings of any kind. Of the 2 programs that had findings, one we considered an immaterial matter of noncompliance. It means there are some very specific nitpicky rules. They weren't followed exactly to the letter. You ought to do something about it, but it's not that big of a deal. One of the programs, however, and this is very unusual for Kent County, I should point out, the degree of problem that we identified for this one specific program rose to the level where we did not believe we could say that the county had complied with the requirements in all material respects, and that was the Continuum of Care program. So if we can flip the page, I will walk you through our 3 findings in brief, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions you have on those. So on page 16, finding 2018-1, this is the one material matter that came to our attention related to the financial statements. Kent County's CAFR is over 240 pages, and out of all of that, we had one issue that we felt was big enough that needed to be corrected and we felt would have materially impacted the financial statements. It was the accrual of certain millage resources that ultimately were being adjusted through the local stabilization revenues. It was a payment that came after the fiscal year. It was properly recorded in total, but it was misallocated by fund. It was one of those year-end adjustments. It didn't really relate to things that happened throughout the year, but that misallocation, if we hadn't caught it and worked with management to correct it, we think it would have had a material impact on some of those separate millage funds that would have been impacted by it. The correction has been made, the issue has been identified, and controls have been put in place to make sure this doesn't happen again. First time it's happened, it's one of those things, I have to bring it to your attention. It's in writing. We've identified it as material given the dollars involved, but I don't see this as a pervasive issue that you're going to need to worry about prospectively. The second item on page 17 then is that one grant that had a fairly significant issue, and that grant is the Continuum of Care program. Many grant programs the county receives and spends locally with its own personnel. And as we found through all of our testing, those programs were run extremely well. We did not find issues with any of the things the county directly administered. The Continuum of Care grant is one of the few programs the county receives and then passes on to somebody else. And when the county receives money and doesn't spend it themselves, they rather subcontract with another agency to provide the services, the county has an obligation to go out and monitor their work. Just like the state would check up on you if you were running a state program, you are checking up on your subrecipients when they're administering a program you gave them. And due to some fairly significant staff turnover, there was a gap where the records are very vague. This monitoring that was supposed to happen, we saw evidence of some of it being done. And what we saw, some of it was documented well enough, some of it was documented incompletely. Some of it, it certainly gave us the impression that it was scheduled, probably occurred, and then somebody left before they wrote it all up and documented it. The challenge for us as auditors is if it's not written down, it looks the same to us as if it didn't happen, and we had to report this as a material finding and ultimately say that the county failed to comply with those monitoring requirements. There is a corrective action plan included in this report. Management has already reviewed the situation and is making changes to centralize document retention in fiscal services to ensure that critical information needed for the audit does not fall between the cracks. Frankly, that's very frequently the right solution when a large decentralized government has issues with grant administration. All of the departments that are administering these grants have a lot of other things they're doing, and fiscal services is best trained and equipped to think about audit-related issues, and so having them play quarterback will probably be the best solution here. The departments still have to do the work. They still have to do the monitoring, but having someone who knows what the auditors will need at the end aggregate that data should be an appropriate solution to this finding. And then on page 19, the one small program, or small issue, we call this immaterial noncompliance, a different program with different monitoring requirements, and there were 8 monitoring reports that we looked for, and 5 of those 8 programs could not be identified. However, we were able to find sufficient other information to verify that at least it happened, but the documentation needed to be stronger. Basically the same solution to the previous problem. Get a good system to capture the good work you're actually doing during the year, and that will go a long way to avoiding these problems in the future. The final thing I'll share before I turn it over to your questions is we also issue a freestanding letter. It's addressed to the Board of Commissioners. We also refer to it as our report to those charged with governance. This is a summary of how the audit itself went. The first several pages are all fairly boilerplate. They indicate that we didn't encounter any problems. Management was extremely cooperative. There weren't any major changes to accounting rules or pronouncements this year that you need to be concerned about. But on page A1, we have the final place for us to give minor recommendations. These are things that we don't believe rise to the level of a finding. They're just comments and suggestions for further enhancement to the county's already very good internal control system. The first is a reminder of a prior recommendation related to processing of Board of Review changes. After taxes have been levied, the Board of Review occasionally will go through and adjust those. That information is not always received and processed timely. In most cases, the dollars are very insignificant, and it doesn't matter. But occasionally, those cases can be significant. We're encouraging the county to step up the timeliness of its review of Board of Review changes, just to make sure if there ever was a significant change, it makes it into the right fiscal year. And then the next item, equipment management. Anytime the feds provide the resources to buy a piece of significant equipment, in this case it was a walk-in freezer, it needs to be added to a special list that the county maintains. One item of equipment was initially overlooked in that process this year because it was accidentally charged to the wrong account. And when it was charged to the wrong account, it didn't flag being added to the list. So we've just encouraged the county to broaden its search for transactions that might need to be added to that list each year. And then finally, related to food inventory that the county is handing on to for distributions, there are inventory count sheets that are done periodically to keep that properly accounted for. We noted a few instances where the official record and the manually created backup didn't agree. Ultimately, we got comfortable with the reasons for those differences, but it's just a documentation thing. We would encourage the county to be extra diligent anytime there is a legitimate difference between a handwritten record that is supporting the official record, that difference be noted and signed off by a supervisor saying, yes, I agree, it's appropriate in these circumstances. So that's the overview. It's really easy to latch on to all the bad stuff I just said when you have to understand this represents maybe 1% of everything we looked at. 99% of what we looked at was wonderful. Kent County continues to be the gold standard that we hold our clients up to and talk about excellent financial management, excellent financial systems, and you really should be commended for an overall very clean audit, even though there are a few issues that do need to be addressed. I'll turn it over to you for questions.
Thank you, Steve. Questions or comments today? Commissioner Voorhees.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning.
A couple areas, one of surety and one of accountability, is the handling of cash. That arena is always suspect to problems. And the other is accountability on credit cards. What do we have established that there is extra care shown in those arenas?
So I mentioned that the audit doesn't look at everything every year, but cash is definitely one of those areas that do get looked at very closely every year. So the county has very robust cash handling procedures that we have documented, and we do detailed tests for every year to make sure things are being followed appropriately. Bank reconciliation processes, appropriate support on incoming cash receipts, etc. I don't have the entire process memorized, but certainly documented in our binder. In addition to the main cash collection that takes place in this building, we know that there are a variety of smaller county departments that may accept cash over the counter at their locations, maybe something with parks or with the health department or various things. On a rotating basis, each year we select at least one, many times 2 or 3 departments to visit and do specific cash handling testing. I don't remember which ones were on rotation this year, but I know they all came out clean. We didn't have any issues with those. And we'll continue to randomly sample even the small ones to make sure even small amounts of cash aren't slipping through. In terms of credit cards, the best practice, of course, would be any purchase is going through an appropriate level of supervision and review. We recognize it's appropriate for very small purchases to need less review and larger ones to need more, but each year we look at the county's policy for that, draw a random sample of items that were purchased by different people throughout the year, and again, this year nothing came to our attention that was a violation of policy, and the policy continued to appear appropriate to us. You're always exposed to risk anytime you handle cash. You're always exposed to risk anytime you use credit cards. You can't do business without being exposed to risk. All we're saying is we felt the level of risk that the county has accepted is appropriate under the circumstances.
Commissioner Steck.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning.
So, as you point out, when you have a new car and you see that small little dent, that's all you can think about, right?
Very true.
So it is good news generally, but just let me focus on just that one monitoring issue that you talk about. Do you know what is the impact, if anything, on the federal funding if there's a non-compliance as you've identified? Is the funding at risk? Is it lost?
Well, I'm going to give you both a theoretical answer and a practical answer. So theoretically, the fact that we have identified these funds as having been insufficiently monitored does raise the risk that the grantor agency could ask for repayment. In practice, I would say I have seen that virtually never. So I would consider it extraordinarily unlikely that there would be economic consequences. The time where you see that is when an organization has had an issue pointed out to them, and they have repeatedly, year after year, failed to take corrective action. That is not the case here. This is the first time we've seen this issue, and it's been related to very specific and identifiable staff turnover. My expectation, and it's not my decision to make, but my expectation is that the federal agency will look at this, say, we see the corrective action plan you've developed, we're satisfied with that. As long as you proceed forward, there won't be any further consequences.
Fix the scratch and move on.
That would be my expectation.
Thank you.
Great. Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning.
I'm not going to let you out of here until I ask the same questions every year. We're compliant with all the new GASB regulations in the county, and our new system works with that, and we're good to go as far as being compliant with all the new GASB standards, correct?
Absolutely. The Governmental Accounting Standards Board sets the rules for governments to follow. The state of Michigan requires local governments to follow GASB regulations. Kent County is very much on top of those. We meet regularly throughout the year to talk about new standards, how the implementation will take place. And at this point, we are fully compliant at the county with all of the current regulations, and plans are in place for the new ones that are coming. So, in good shape there.
Okay, great. Follow up? Thank you. Can you just very briefly touch on our OPEB obligation and where we stand on that, and the VEBA regulations and
Sure.
where we're at with that?
So there was a recent change in Michigan law, Public Act 202 of, I believe it was 2017, that has set a high bar to try and make sure local governments in Michigan are keeping up with their obligations to their employees, the commitments that they've made for pension, retiree benefits, and OPEB, retiree health care, and other benefits that happen after retirement. Kent County, if you want to look at the numbers, they're on pages 132 and then again on page 136. We see here the results of the county's pension system and the VEBA, which is the OPEB, other post-employment benefits system. The long-term goal for any pension plan and for any OPEB plan is to be 100% funded. 100% funded doesn't mean you have all the money you'll ever need. It just means you're where you should be today on that path towards having the resources to meet obligations. As a practical matter, hitting 100% on an annual basis is next to impossible. The stock market fluctuates up and down. You try to get as close to it as possible and hover around that area. If you look on page 132, the third to last column, it's labeled Plan Fiduciary Net Position as a percentage of total pension liability. That's a fancy way of saying your funded percentage. How funded are you? And we look at a trend here. You have, from the last 5 years, hovered in the 90s to low 100s percentage. You're right where you ought to be. It's going to be up and down. It's going to be volatile. That's the way the stock market works. But this is an extremely well-funded plan. It's exactly where you need to be. It should allow the employees of Kent County to have confidence that the Board of Commissioners has taken the necessary steps to ensure when they retire and expect benefit payments, the money will be there to meet those obligations. Now, if we flip a couple of pages to 136, we'll see a similar table for OPEB, the VEBA, and that retiree health care. Now, we've been doing pensions well as a state for many, many years. That's a constitutional provision. Trying to do the same thing for retiree health care is a much more recent phenomenon. And the state has set a standard that they would like to see all Michigan governments get to a minimum of 40% funding. Long term, we want to get to 100, but a minimum of 40% funding over the next 30 years. That's the goal that the state has set for Michigan governments. You're at 45% today. Now, that doesn't, I'm not asking you to stop. I want you to keep heading to 100, but you have already met the 30-year goal the state of Michigan has set for OPEB plans, and your funding policy, if you continue, will get you to 100% at the end of that 30-year period through closed amortization and aggressive funding strategies. The other thing is, it's easy to manipulate these liabilities. You can make them look small by painting a very rosy picture about how the stock market will do, and you hear about plans trying to set discount rates that are very high, saying, oh, we're going to get 7, 8, 9% in the market. You've set a very conservative fiscal policy well below the required caps to say, we're not going to bank on a higher investment return than we think is realistic, and even with those conservative estimates, you're already over the benchmark for where you need to be 30 years from now. So, is the work done? No, but you're in an excellent position and absolutely heading the right direction.
Commissioner Talon.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning.
We have had discussions, and we'll be continuing those after this meeting, on some significant capital projects. And some of the funding for that is supposed to come out of what we call the Strategic Capital Fund. Can you point to where that is shown in the audit report, the status of that fund? I looked, I couldn't find it. I wondered if perhaps it was under another name.
There aren't any funds that use the name Strategic Capital Fund in the CAFR. Steve, do you know what fund number he's referring to?
It's within the CIP fund as a line item.
So that is going to be Fund 445? It's 445? Okay. So you can see the balance in Fund 445 on page 41. At the CAFR level, we call that public improvement. And the total balance in public improvement, which I understand includes other things besides just the strategic piece, is about $25 million at the end of 2018.
Thank you.
Commissioner Wooden.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to continue a little bit on, as Commissioner Steck wisely talked about it, rubbing out the scratch. It seems to me that the staff change was unique, as you've mentioned. What was in the planned corrective action that treats actually with the staff turnover when it's a contracting agency? I realize that if there's a major staff change within our own entity, there's an onboarding process. But when there's a major staff change in a contracted agency, what are we doing to ensure that same onboarding is happening when new staff are brought on board?
It's an excellent question. The corrective action plan is found on page 21 of this smaller document, so you can read it for yourself. It's actually fairly succinct, and that's for a reason. The agency who requests this does not want a lot of detail. They just want to know that there is a plan.
Yeah.
It speaks largely to management staff documenting document storage for subrecipient monitoring and minimizing the risk. To your specific question, I can tell you what needs to happen. Whether or not it has already taken place is something we can discuss later. But what needs to happen is anytime the county provides resources to a subrecipient, another contracted agency, the first step is to identify the risk that that agency will fail to follow the rules. And we have provided in the past, and I'm sure the county still has, a copy of a subrecipient risk assessment checklist that helps guide that process. And among the factors are, do they have new staff? So speaking to turnover, do they have new systems? And do the programs they're administering have new requirements this year? So if you take those into consideration when establishing the risk, then that risk drives the decision of how often you're going to monitor. From that point, this corrective action plan kicks in very nicely in that you will capture, aggregate, and respond to all of those monitoring visits, which would be in response to the risk, which is in response to the staff turnover. So I think that gets us there indirectly at least.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bolkowski.
Excuse me. Thank you, Chair. Most of my questions followed up or were asked by Commissioner Morgan. As it relates to the federal dollars, though, we have to report on our unfunded liabilities or overfunded liabilities and all that stuff. Of that $28 million, is there a requirement to report how much of that is borrowed and how much of that is actual cash or coming out of trust funds from a federal level? Or is it just all federal money and we consider it good?
So the dollars we're talking about on the schedule of expenditures of federal awards, and it's a 5 or 6 page schedule, but it ends on page 7 if you want to see the number that we're talking about. This represents resources that were received from the federal government during fiscal 2018 and spent. So all the money came from the feds, either directly or passed through the state of Michigan, and was spent. None of it was borrowed, none of it would have come through trust funds. It would have all just been received and expended in that year.
I meant borrowed by the federal government.
Oh, no, there's...
In their audit, I mean, we're going to borrow $1 trillion this year, but what if this $28 million is unfunded liabilities on their perspective?
The source of the funding at the federal level is outside of the scope of what the county is responsible for, and it's not reported here, and I'm not even sure there would be an easy way to identify the original source at the federal level of where those dollars were provided.
All right, thanks.
Commissioner Antor.
Thank you, Chair. And Commissioner Bukowski's, I think we're printing money, probably, along with everything else. Not us, but at the federal level.
I understand.
If you just watch that clock roll, there's a lot that goes into it. But I was wondering, you mentioned credit cards, and I guess first time ever, I've never really thought of that before within the framework of our government. I'm assuming the people that have them, they're great tools. I know Dave Ramsey probably slapped me on the face for saying that, but they really are. But I'm assuming that we pay them off every month and we're not accruing any interest or
Correct. And in a
penalties.
governmental context, we typically refer to them as P cards or purchasing cards. They operate like credit cards. They have a Visa or MasterCard logo on them that allows them to be used to book necessary travel, online purchases that can only be facilitated that way. But in reality, they are, the balances would be paid each month within a 20-day period or so, and the county would not only not incur interest, but would typically get a rebate on those purchases.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Steve today? All right, seeing none, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's always a
Appreciate all your
pleasure
work.
working with Kent County.
Thank you. On to item 6 today, public comment related to our agenda. Is there any public comment today related to the current agenda? All right, seeing none, we will move to item 7, consent agenda, and I'll call on Commissioner Softfeld. Oh, I'm sorry. Welcome.
Good morning, Commissioners and Madam Chair. I'm Teresa Hendricks. I'm an attorney and director with Migrant Legal Aid, but today I'm wearing the hat of the convener of the Concerned Citizens for Farmland Preservation. And I'm here today to say thanks and to leave you with a gift from our committee. Before I do that, I wanted to thank the county administration for convening our strategic planning meetings to look at planning for the county. And also wanted to thank the commissioners that have worked on this issue for many years, almost 20 years now. And also thank the commissioners that showed up at our recent event where we set out to raise funds towards farmland preservation, and that was called the Celebrate Kent Farms. And that went very well. And my grandma always said it's never a good idea to look back unless you can see how far you've come. And I look back at the history, and we started in 2000 with wanting to preserve 100,000 acres. In 2002, we got our ordinance in the county. And in 2015, the county convened the agribusiness work group, and they came out with a tremendous report, and it had all of the data and statistics that everybody would be impressed with. They were able to read the whole report. The 3 statistics that I liked the best from that report were that farmland generates $231 million to the market economy of Kent County, and produces $579 million in labor income and covers 26,000 jobs. And in 2017, this commission looked at that report and thankfully adopted the report unanimously. And I was there that day, and Commissioner Bulkowski had said, this is great, we unanimously adopt this report, we recognize the importance of farmland, what are we gonna do about it next? And that's where our committee got to work and started to look into the different funding tools. And so I wanted to present this check to the county, and it is from our sponsors and from many of the attendees that came to the Celebrate Kent Farms event. And the check is for $6,000. But the most important part of this check is that this can be parlayed with state money into an additional amount of money. It can be a 50% match, meaning for $6,000 we can get 12. And then the same thing can happen once it is parlayed into the federal requests. So we know that in October, our state will have available approximately $2 million towards this effort.
You've got 30 seconds left.
And the report recommended 2 techniques for preserving farmland. It said 50% of the farmland should be preserved through PDR, and 50% should be preserved through TDR. And so our group will continue to try to be supportive in that regard with the county's work.
Great. Thank you, and I appreciate you coming today. We did change up our rules a little bit, so our public comment for the first round is for agenda items only for today. But thank you for coming, and we appreciate your comments.
Thanks for accommodating me.
Thank you so much. All right, now we will move on to item 7, consent agenda, and I will call on Commissioner Softfeld.
Thank you, Chair. I would move our consent agenda as of today.
Support. Moved by Commissioner Softfeld, support by Commissioner Jones. Questions or comments on the consent agenda? All right, seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the motion to adopt the consent agenda, Commissioner Skaggs.
Yes.
Wooden.
Yes.
Womack.
Yes.
Bulkowski.
Yes.
Talon.
Yes.
Hennessy.
Yes.
Melton.
Yes.
Sparks. Saalfeld.
Yes.
Breivy.
Yes.
Coleman. Voorhees.
Yes.
Ponstein.
Yes.
Vice Chair Steck.
Yes.
Commissioners Jones.
Yes.
Morgan.
Yes.
Antor.
Yes.
Vonk.
Yes.
Chair Bolter.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 18 yeas, 0 nays. The motion passes. The consent agenda is adopted.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We're on to item 8, resolutions, and I will call on Commissioner Melton for Resolution 8A.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that we adapt the midterm vacancies that have been filled by persons that we talked about in the policies meeting. Today's date, Article 60.
Moved by Commissioner Melton, support by Commissioner Steck. Questions or comments on this? All right, seeing none, this is not a roll call vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. On to item 8B, I'll call on Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move Resolution 61. It's to authorize bonds to refund the Building Authority Bond Series 2009A from Fiscal Services.
Moved by Commissioner Morgan.
Support.
Support by Commissioner Breivy. Questions or comments on this issue? All right, seeing none, this is a roll call. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the motion to adopt Resolution 725-1961, Commissioners Skaggs.
Yes.
Wooden.
Yes.
Womack.
Yes.
Bulkowski.
Yes.
Talon.
Yes.
Hennessy.
Yes.
Melton.
Yes.
Sparks. Saalfeld.
Yes.
Breivy.
Yes.
Coleman. Voorhees.
Yes.
Ponstein.
Yes.
Vice Chair Steck.
Yes.
Commissioners Jones.
Yes.
Morgan.
Yes.
Antor.
Yes.
Vonk.
Yes.
Chair Bolter.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 18 yeas, 0 nays. The motion passes. Resolution 725-1961 is adopted.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. On to item 8C, and I'll call on Commissioner Bulkowski.
Thank you, Chair. I move Resolution 62 dated today to approve funding from the ill-fated Lakeshore Regional Entity and add 1 public health educator position.
Moved by Commissioner Bulkowski, support by Commissioner Morgan. Questions or comments on this issue?
I had to support that.
Thank you.
All right, seeing none, this is not a roll call.
It's true.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. On to item 8D, I will call on Commissioner Breivy.
Thank you, Chair. I move item 63 of today's date, the Kent County Guardianship Program Budget Amendment from probate.
Moved by Commissioner Breivy.
Support.
Support by Commissioner Melton. Any questions or comments on this issue? Seeing none, this is a roll call. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the motion to adopt Resolution 725-1963, Commissioners Skaggs.
Yes.
Wooden.
Yes.
Womack.
Yes.
Bulkowski.
Yes.
Talon.
Yes.
Hennessy.
Yes.
Melton.
Yes.
Sparks. Saalfeld.
Yes.
Breivy.
Yes.
Coleman. Voorhees.
Yes.
Ponstein.
Yes.
Vice Chair Steck.
Yes.
Commissioners Jones.
Yes.
Morgan.
Yes.
Antor.
Yes.
Vonk.
Yes.
Chair Bolter.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 18 yeas, 0 nays. The motion passes. Resolution 725-1963 is adopted.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. On to the last resolution for today, AE. I'll call on Commissioner Breivy again.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to move Resolution 64 of today's date, the 2019 Zoo and Museum Millage Fund Budget Amendment from Fiscal Services.
Moved by Commissioner Breivy. Support by Commissioner Voorhees. Questions or comments? All right, seeing none, this is a, I'm sorry, Commissioner Talon.
Thank you, Chair. I had some questions about this that I appreciated help from staff and other board members in helping to resolve those. Continue to have a little bit of concern about the board's responsibility for the budget, for knowing what the budget is, for approving that, and wondering whether there could be some sort of commitment from staff that when there is a budget change related to this, that there be some sort of official memorandum of notification to the board so we know that there's been a budget change. We ultimately are responsible for that, so wondering if that would be amenable. Feels like something we ought to do.
We can certainly do that. In this particular case, we identify the action request as written and This is our process for notifying the board, so, but we can issue additional detail if you'd like. I'm not sure I'm clear on exactly what you're looking for.
Well, if I could follow up, what we're approving here is allowing budget changes to happen. What I'm asking for is when those do happen, could the amounts, so that we know what the new budget amount is, could those be notified to the board?
Okay.
Because this is pretty vague, and so the board could not know what the actual budget is.
The total amount that we're talking about, I think Steve mentioned it was $58,000 is what's estimated right now. And it could change based on what the revenues are expected to come in. We don't know that number, but we can give you as clear a path as possible. Estimate.
Well, but what we're asking for here, I think, is a budget amendment authorization, right? So when that budget changes, could the board be notified, is what I'm asking, about what the change in the actual budgeted amount is? And we could talk about it after. if
Yeah,
that
I'd
would
like
be
to understand
helpful,
more
but-
what you're getting at.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Ponstein?
Thank you, Chair Bolter. Along as we're doing that, can we also break it down? I mean, it's a 1 mil levy, correct? And it generates 10 million. How that's broken down, and of that levy, who is exempting themselves from that, and the money goes to their coffers versus what
Sure,
the
we can
people who
provide
bought
that.
it would have, and just get more of a breakdown
Sure.
of that total amount and what's not being collected because we can. And
Sure, we can do that.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Bukowski?
Thank you, Chair. I just didn't want to leave the semi-confusion related to Commissioner Talon's point, and if I can attempt clarity, which is not my strong suit. We appropriated a sum certain in the budget, and now there's more money available, but we don't know exactly how much will be available. So instead of appropriating a sum certain, we are approving you, Wayman, and other, related staff to send every dollar we get
Correct.
to the two recipients, the zoo and the museum. We're not appropriating a sum certain. And so
Right.
Commissioner Talon's request, the way I understand it, is that when you know the sum certain, we're notified, so we know exactly how much money's going over and when it's going over. Because again, in essence, you're amending the budget every day we have a dollar more. And it's our job to amend the budget. So again, we're giving you a lot of discretion, and it's
I get that.
easy. So that makes sense?
Okay.
Perfect.
I'm good.
Yeah,
I'm
I figure
good
you
with
would
that.
be.
I'm good with that.
Yeah. All right, good.
Got it.
Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Wooden?
Thanks, Commissioner Volkowski, for making that clarity. I was trying to do the same myself, and you did it much better than I could have. I just found it poetic, and I said this to Commissioner Voorhees, that with the change in the agenda, we truly weren't through until we voted for the zoo. And so I'm excited to vote for this, and thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Commissioner Jones?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to add that I appreciate that we went ahead to add this to the mix, because if we hadn't done this change, then the entities that would be receiving the monies that were voted on by our residents to go to these entities would be held up an additional time period that one could argue isn't fair to them. And I think this was the smoothest way to get those funds to those entities, and I'm glad that we're acting fiscally responsibly to get that overflow to them.
Yeah, one of the hiccups that comes along with this is the number of meetings that we have during the summer months. And so with the fact that we're meeting today, we wanted to get this in front of you. We didn't want to wait and then not be able to move those dollars as soon as we had them. So that's another reason for moving it ahead, getting your permission to do it. So just to know that it's really more of a timing issue for us than it is anything else, wanting to make sure we got your approval to move on it when we have it.
And I just want to add, these are dedicated funds. It's not like the money's coming into general fund and we're choosing to give it to
Right.
the zoo. It's already, it's literal pass-through,
Right.
so. Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Morgan?
Just a comment. I don't have a problem with the process, but I do recognize that we do have a fiduciary responsibility financially to weigh in on this stuff.
Any- Anyone else? Any other comments? All right, seeing none, this is a roll call. I call on the clerk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the motion to adopt Resolution 725-1964, Commissioners Skaggs,
Yes.
Wooden,
Yes.
Womack,
Yes.
Bulkowski, Talon,
Yes.
Hennessy, Melton, Sparks, Salfeld,
Yes.
Breeby,
Yes.
Coleman, Voorhees, Ponstein, Vice Chair Steck,
Yes.
Commissioners Jones,
Yes.
Morgan, Antor, Vonk,
Yes.
Chair Bolter.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 18 yeas, 0 nays. The motion passes. Resolution 725-1964 is adopted.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We are on to item 9, and this is the second public comment of 1 minute for any county-related matter. Doesn't have to be the agenda. So if anyone would like to come up and speak for 1 minute on,
Point of order, Chair,
Oh,
that,
sure.
I think that 1 minute requirement was eliminated.
oh, it was eliminated. Okay. Oh.
So it's 3.
Okay, so it's 3. Okay, thank you. 3 minutes to talk about anything your heart desires. All right, seeing none, we'll move on to item 10, reports. Commissioner reports, item 10. Any reports today? Commissioner Talon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was privileged to participate in the first meeting of the Michigan Joint Task Force on Jail and Pretrial Incarceration yesterday in Detroit. It's great work that's happening. It's amazing that there seems to be bipartisan interest in what's going on in our jails, so it's exciting work. I will be sending some information out about that work so that you all can remain informed and others that would be interested in it in the community. But I did want to ask you to, if you are interested in this work, to mark September 20 on your calendar. That's when the task force will be meeting in Grand Rapids. There will be a work session of the task force in the morning and then an opportunity for public input. So testimony about how the system affects you, your department, your work. And I want to get that on folks' calendars and encourage you to participate in that if you have interest in this topic. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Bulkowski.
Thank you, Chair. The Friend of the Court Advisory Committee met last week. I invite you all to, read the minutes when they get sent to us. The Friend of the Court continues to focus on improvement of support for all the folks who, good and bad, have opportunity to avail themselves of their services. And just to note, we did have a good discussion related to what we're going to be doing next and what we did a couple weeks ago related to our capital issues. My personal, and I think it was shared by the rest of the Friend of the Court Advisory Committee, is the focus on customer service. So definitely, double thumbs up for the opportunity to have a place in North County to provide service or, staff there in a hoteling fashion. And then also, not curious, but, again, focused on what will happen with the customer service, good and bad of those shifts, whatever happens to 82 Ionia. So just that we're having those conversations and looking forward to future in 20 minutes, 10 minutes.
Awesome. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Commissioner Vonk.
Thank you, Chair. This week I received a phone call from Senator Peters' office, and he's doing a motorcycle tour of the state. On August 9th, he'll be leaving Big Rapids and arriving at the Grand Rapids Airport at 10 o'clock, and he's going to have a 15-minute meeting with the airport officials, and county commissioners are welcome to be there. I'm not sure he called me because I'm a Republican or because I was a biker. I'm trying to figure that out right now. But he's been very positive
of attaining that tower, and it'd be nice that we showed them a good response. And I asked them if they were meeting for a staging area before they came into Grand Rapids. Maybe even the sheriff department could give us an escort in traffic. It's always exciting. It's white knuckle if you're riding bike in traffic. So just a heads up, and keep you informed if I hear anything more.
What was that date and time?
August 9th.
August 9th. Are you gonna ride in with them?
Well, I was asking about that staging area, and
Yeah,
they
okay.
weren't sure what they were doing, but it's quite a good ride-in from Big Rapids, so.
Awesome. Commissioner Melton?
Thank you, Chair. I was just checking something. I don't know if Commissioner Brevi was going to report on the chalk, but there were a couple things that really came to mind. Okay, thank you. We discussed again the opioid crisis. I'm sure, hopefully someone has noticed that in the last a week or so, there's been probably 10 days, an awful lot of information that has flooded the newspaper, the news, whatever, about how the drug companies introduced some of these into some of our smaller communities, some of our rural communities, and how, in fact, we kind of got into this start of this severe problem that we do have. And so it was discussed at great length about how the county and how the county will do things and what it should do. The other information, of course, is that the tick population is increasing and increasing, and so please be very careful. My niece found a tick on her 2-year-old daughter after just playing outside in the backyard. Was pretty scary, but knew what to look for, so that's very good. And then our own Adam London has been seen on YouTube, and I don't know what else on media. I don't see everything on vaccinations to vaccinate, but the really cool part of that is they have a new room, and I should probably let him tell you better, but it's amazing. It's like their own thank you, studio, and he goes in, or whomever goes in, and they can broadcast anything at this point, and it is really, really neat that personal touch can come across better to us in the community. So good things going on at the health department.
Great. Commissioner Steck?
Thank you, Chair. Probably only appropriate that I report from the ill-fated LRV after hearing about the tick population. Yeah, lots going on, and the efforts in continuing to work with the state on how we preserve some of the key foundations for our public health system continue. Those are not completed yet. There's a lot of conversations going on. I wanted you to know that there will also be legal proceedings probably initiated this week, so it's likely that there will be further reports in the media with respect to this, so I encourage anyone who has questions. I can't possibly give you an update now and do it justice, but certainly if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to me. With respect to 180, we are pleased to, if you haven't seen the news report, that we do have a new director coming in later this year, Mr. Bill Ward, so we're looking forward to that.
Thank you. Commissioner Jones?
Thank you, Chair. Just a note that the Kent County Parks Foundation did have a meeting this week. I was there. They did also have the statue for Peter Secchia and honoring him at Millennium Park. So if you haven't seen that, I encourage everyone while you're in that area to go do that. Just a little note on the CAA, even though we don't highlight this very often, but SMG is doing a really great job with their programming this year with Van Andel and DeVos Place. Just this month, I was there for 2 events that I purchased tickets for. Both Heart was well attended, along with ELO, which was completely sold out this week on a Tuesday night. And I just think when you look at the volume of people you get in that arena, what a great asset to have for us, for our community. So those are the 2 things I wanted to make a note of.
Great. Any other commissioner reports? Commissioner Hennessy?
Thank you. I will just say that the Area Agency of Aging on Western Michigan has updated its strategic plan. It's on file in the administrator's office. They have, the dissertation, and then there is a chart type form of where they're going a few years in the future. So it is available for review.
Great. Commissioner Skaggs.
Thank you, Chair. Also want to report on behalf of myself and Commissioner Sparks that last week we had the first meeting of the board to look at the Ready by 5 grant disbursement money and disperse the first cash of that, $2.4 million for general navigation, make sure that parents are able to get the existing resources that are available to them.
Great. Any other reports? All right, we'll move on to miscellaneous. Commissioner Antor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a reminder, if folks could put this on their calendar as well, speaking of motorcycles, our 6th annual Freedom Cruise will be taking place this year at Fifth Third Ballpark. That's where it starts, and we'll make a little tour around northern Kent County. And this year, we're honoring the family of Chad Balmer, who was a Central High School graduate, and he died in Iraq in 2006. So we're going to be honoring him. We have a group that's called American Fallen Soldier Project. They come up every year to do a portrait. And if you've never been to the event, it can be a kind of a life changer. It's just a great time to honor our veterans. We'll have some World War II veterans there and veterans from all the different services. But they really appreciate the outpouring of support. So if you put it down, it'd be September, I think I said September 22nd, and
September or August?
September.
September.
Yep, September 22nd, it's a Sunday afternoon, so,
Great.
thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Melton. Bless you.
Am I still on? I guess I'm still on. Thank you, Chair. So I received a note from Right Place that Roscam Bakery is expanding in Kentwood, 320-some new jobs. I don't have it right here in front of me, so I'm not always real good with numbers, but that's very, very good news. Always exciting to hear. And then there's a grand opening for, I don't have that written down either, but it's something Hawk Brewery and Restaurant. What? Cooper's Hawk, and they are opening right off the Beltline near 28th Street. So again, very, very exciting to see that these places are wanting to and choosing to move into our county.
Commissioner Morgan.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I just wanted to make a comment on the financial report today and how clean the audit was, and you kind of get lulled to sleep to some of this, but, the effort of our staff and our employees to kind of monitor and keep these OPEB benefits in check really is worth mentioning. And I know there's a lot of counties that would just, I'm not going to say would kill to be in our position. They would love to be in our position, our financial position with these two programs. So hats off to the organization, top to bottom, for another clean report. And it's just not ho-hum. This is really good stuff.
Commissioner Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I know that we all had a note on the emergency challenges that we've had with the storm that came through, and I think that overall we did that really well. Personally, I was affected without power for many days, and I'm very, very grateful to consumers. It's amazing how much you'll appreciate power when you don't have it.
Commissioner Bolkowski.
Thank you, Chair. Just a reminder, tomorrow is the 29th anniversary of the signing of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Kent County should equally be proud of the efforts we have to support and include folks with disabilities. It's the work of the LRE, Network 180, Health Department, CERT, all kinds of stuff. And then, not to rest on our laurels, I know you all watch my Facebook page, but there were 70 of us wandering through downtown Grand Rapids the past couple of days looking at how we can, where are the current barriers and how we can improve that. So we're looking to come to communities near you. We will go out to far off places like Bound and Sand Lake and every point in between. So
let me know.
Yeah, continuing to celebrate, again, how our county works for inclusion at all levels. Thank you.
Commissioner Ponstein.
Thank you, Chair Bolter. It seems like every week, I always get a call or someone comes up that you really don't understand what county government does. And we can have the best employees around, but if we're not good at telling our story, people are going to still continue to ask that. So with those remarks, I just wanted to thank the Kent County Sheriff's Department, which was in Granville, along with our Public Works Department at an event at the Public Library. It was remarkable to see the kids lined up to tour the mobile command unit. It was also fascinating to watch the Public Works Department teach little kids about recycling and trash and everything that the Public Works Department does. So just want to say we've got a good story here in Kent County, along with a lot of other counties. We just got to tell it better.
Commissioner Hennessy.
The next election is Tuesday, August 6th, but that also is the traditional National Night Out, when neighborhood associations in the city and throughout the county will be bringing residents together for community events. And I would like to thank the Health Department for their cooperation. There's usually food or treats involved for people who come to these events, and I appreciate that the Health Department is working closely to make this possible for each of our neighborhoods.
Thank you. Commissioner Womack.
Yes, I'd like to say, here in Kent County, the city of Grand Rapids has appointed its first African-American police chief, Chief Eric Payne. So just want to say congratulations to him and thank our sheriff department for coming out for his initiation into his new position. Also, at the Whitecaps baseball game on August 18th, myself and Johnny Brand are going to sponsor 40 kids that will attend that game with the Grand Rapids Police Department. Each month, we will have a children's night out with our police officers so they can get to know each other on a great basis before you're pulled over for a ticket. So it won't be your first time meeting our officers who are out there doing a wonderful job. And Eric Payne is scheduled to throw out the first pitch on the August 18th, Chief Payne. So August 18th at the Whitecaps game. So just some great things that are happening in Kent County, some of the positive things.
Great. Commissioner Saalfeld.
Thank you, Chair. I have had an opportunity to meet Ms. Hendricks, who spoke to us during a public comment, and have had several conversations with her about PDR. There was one thing said, and maybe I misunderstood it, but I just wanted to clarify it, a reference to a 50-50 funding between PDR and TDR. That was not a recommendation from the report. We were very careful about how we addressed funding in that report, and there was reference to the TDR, which the state of Michigan has not adopted and is not available to us. But I just wanted to clarify that point, since I did chair that committee, and just make sure that if we do look at that, I think that report was very well done, and I think we should go back and look carefully at those points of recommendation that were in that report. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Saalfeld. Commissioner Talon.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to take the opportunity to follow up on my colleague's comment on the Fernandel Arena and recognize that it is a great community resource, and it's owned by the Convention and Arena Authority, but the funding for that was significantly borrowed through bonding, and the bonds are still being paid out of DDA funds, of which the county is a significant contributor. So in addition to being a great resource, it's something that the county continues to contribute to, I think through maybe 2025, but 24, yeah. But
the DDA can't bond anymore, that was a special, remember, a
yeah,
special deal.
yeah. So anyway, just wanted to recognize that. Thank you.
Any other miscellaneous today? Oh, Skaggs. Commissioner Skaggs.
Just wanted to recognize Commissioner Melton on what Dwight Schrute would call the anniversary of your birth. So happy birthday, Betsy.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Any other miscellaneous? All right. Seeing none, I just want to remind you that we do have a quick, might not be super quick, but a work session immediately following this. We'll take a 10-minute break and then start our work session. I will now call on Commissioner Saalfeld for a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Chair. I would move to adjourn, subject to the call of the chair, till Thursday, August 22nd, 2019, at 8:30 a.m. for an official meeting.
Moved by Commissioner Saalfeld, support by Commissioner Wooden. All in favor, say aye. Aye. We are adjourned.
I am Kent County. I am Kent County.
I am Kent County.
We are 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 Kent County. We are Kent County.
Bayard, Kent County. Ami, Kent County. Somos, Kent County.
Mas Ira, Kent County.
We are Kent County.
We are Kent County. We are Kent County. Oh, yeah.